As we continue today, we're in chapter 51. And before we get started, does anything strike you as what's going on here? Or anything that you noticed? There's actually two things in there.
Listen to me and awake, awake.
You got it. Listen to me and awake, awake. And if you notice, it's at least repeated 3 times, if not more. And usually when God does that, He's definitely trying to get your attention to make sure that you're paying. It's no different when we're learning things. The more often it's repeated, the more often it's going to stick. If I say it just once, it'll probably in one ear and out the other. Kind of like my wife is falling out with me. But if she says it 3 times, I usually kind of get the gist of it. I may not get it right, but I'll get the gist of it. Same thing here. So, with that being said, let us begin. Listen to me, you who follow after righteousness. You who seek the Lord, look to the rock from which you were hewn, and to the hole of the pit from which you were dug. Can anybody tell me what was just said here? Well, basically, who's God talking to?
Us?
Can you elaborate a little bit more besides us? Who, basically what am I saying? Who is us?
God's children.
The ones who follow righteousness. In other words, the followers of God. Okay, so he's not talking to, how should I say, lack of better terms, the general public. He's talking to those who are right with God, because that's what righteousness is, being right with God. In other words, God is in your life, and your life is in God. Because it goes on in the next phrase, you who seek the Lord. Well, the general world does not seek the Lord, it's only those who are in God. And he's saying, look from the rock you were hewn. In other words, look at what base you're on now, and also look at the hole that you come out of. You know, so God's basically saying, yeah, this is who you are, and this is where you've come. And now in the next verse there, looking to Abraham your father and to Sarah who bore you, for I called him alone and blessed him and increased him. For the Lord will comfort Zion, he will comfort all her waste places, he will make her wilderness like Eden, and her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness will be found in it, thanksgiving and the voice of melody. What did God just do here?
Well, he shows us where we came from, shows us our roots.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. He's showing the roots. He's saying, remember. Now remember. And in fact, the next couple of verses will be, remember what I have done, But I got to remind you because you guys tend to forget. And it's amazing how fast we forget. Because I'm going to ask you, if you can tell me, what was the occupation of your great-grandfather? For that matter, can I ask even what his name was? Okay, think about it. Great-grandfather. That's not that far ago. Or even great-grandmother. So how should I say, we tend to forget our history. A lot of times, even if you ask, where you originally come from? Since we're Americans, we're pretty much not all native. Where did you originally come from? And a lot of people can't even answer that, or else, well, they say Scotland. Or in my case, I come from the town of Broomwall. Okay, I'm serious, it is a town. It is a town in Broomwall, and basically it is located in what was formerly the province of Pomerania, which is part of the Germanic Empire, which is now part of Poland. So I can actually generally say I'm actually of Polish descent. So. But I'm a rarity because I do know where I happen to come from.
Right.
You know?
I have some proof of that. I work with a lady, and she has for her entire life thought she was Native American by descent because, well, she looks native. It turns out through DNA ancestry test, she's actually Scottish and Dane, and only thought she was Native American.
Yeah. So,
She told me that, and I was just like, but, and she goes, I know, right?
it's amazing what happened. But this is also why God has to remind them, because they forget their past, and we're all like that. How should I say, if it doesn't impact us, we tend to put it off to the side. You know, and like I say, it goes on, you know, for the Lord will comfort Zion, because he's always there and such. And all this. Verse 4, listen to me, my people, and give ear to me, O my nation. For the law will proceed from me, and I will make my justice rest as a light of the people. What's he saying here?
Soon he comes to make things right.
Yeah. But he's also saying, I am the law, and I will make things right, and my justice, in other words, he's saying it will be as a light to the rest of the world. So just remember, it's still all within me, and they will see my greatness through my justice. And verse 5, my righteousness is near, my salvation has gone forth, and my arm will judge the peoples. The close lands will wait upon me, and my arm they will trust. Excuse me, what did he say here? I have set things in motion. I got things going. The righteousness will happen. You will be right with me. And through my strength, through what I have set in motion, people will be saved and everything will be good. The coastlands, in other words, the whole world, because right now he was talking basically to the people of Zion, for the Jewish people. But remember, when I mention coastlands, that means all the nations. You know, everybody will be, you know, and basically will trust in me. And he goes on to say in verse 6, lift up your eyes to heaven and look on the earth beneath, for the heavens will vanish away like smoke, the earth will grow old like a garment, and those who dwell in it will die in like manner. But my salvation will be forever, and my righteousness will not be abolished. And here he's basically saying, lift up your eyes to heaven. In other words, look up to God. Gaze upon God and look what's going on. Because he's saying everything beneath it is going to disappear. The earth will go old like a garment. What do you do with an old garment? It gets thrown away. And he's also saying those who will dwell in that, or i.e. of the world, will also be cast away. But then that last phrase, but my salvation. In other words, if you are in me, you are right in me. My righteousness will not be abolished, and you will abide with me forever.
God's people should not fear.
No, you do not fear. If you are right with God, do not fear. You know, because he goes on to say in verse 7, now listen to me, you who know righteousness, you people in whose heart is in my law, do not fear the reproach of men, nor be afraid of their insult. In other words, he's saying, if you are right in me and I am you, and such, Don't worry, everything's going to be taken care of. They used to say, don't be afraid of what the world is going to say, because the world is always going to condemn you. But whose opinion matters?
No one's but God.
You got it. Nobody but God's. But yet, we as human value human more than with God. And don't be afraid of their insults. On a little side note, why does somebody usually insult somebody else?
Because they're jealous.
Okay, that could be part of it. They're jealous. What is usually the intent of an insult? To demean and bring down.
Make themselves
Okay.
feel better.
So in other words, if I'm going to insult you, to demean and bring you down, who am I bringing you down to? I'm bringing you down to my level. Okay, that's basically what an insult is. I'm going to drag you down to my level so I can fight the way I know how to fight. And that's why, don't worry about it, because you're not on their level anymore. And Romans 12 too, you are no longer of this world. You have been born again. You're reborn. Do not conform to this world, but be of God's world. That's what he's saying here. You're not part of them. Don't come down to them anymore. So, in verse 8, for the moth will eat them up like a garment, and the worm will eat them like wool. But my righteousness will be forever, and my salvation from generation to generation. Once again, he's saying here, everything else goes, but if you're right with me, and it's not just going to be one generation, I will continue to as long as you are right in me to carry on. Verse 9, awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord. Awake as in the ancient state, in the generations of old. Are you not the arm that cut Rahab apart and wounded the serpent? Are you not the one who dried up the seas, the waters of the great deep, that made the depths of the sea a road for the redeemed across? Once again, he's reminding them of the past. And I know you guys love this when I do this. Who is Rahab?
She's the prostitute that was throwing the red ribbon out the window to be saved.
From where?
Jericho.
You're right.
Jericho.
She was the one in Jericho that saved basically the two Israelite spies that had come by letting them down on the outside. So what happened to her?
She became part of Jesus' lineage.
Okay. God saved her and such, and if you go through the lineage, where does she fit into the lineage?
Way in the beginning.
I was gonna say that's a lot.
She was actually in the line of David. David come from her. Okay? And then since David come from there, where do they all call about Christ? Of the line of David, of the lineage of David. It's interesting to follow. Rahab, I want to say, was a great grandmother to David. Could have been a great great grandmother to David, but she's definitely in the lineage of David. So that's who Rahab was. And yes, God did single her out, he cut her off, because she was the only one, and her family was the only one that was not destroyed with Jericho. You know. But it also goes on to say, look what happened. You know, I made the road during the Exodus and all this such. So he's bringing that back, reminding them. But now in the next verse, so the ransom of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing, with everlasting joy on their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness. Sorrow and sighing shall flee away. What's going here? Who's going to return?
Yeah.
It's hard to know if it's it says, so the ransom of the Lord shall return. Now, is he talking about those that were exiled to Babylon, or is this talking way futuristically? Like-
Yes. This is one of those dual
I was gonna
prophecies.
say, yeah,
Okay, the ransom, those will be the ones coming back from Babylon. But also, who's the ransom of, basically, what is a ransom anyway? It's a payment where you buy back. You know, it's a payment where you buy back. So, put that in. So the buyback of the Lord shall return. Who bought you back from sin?
Jesus.
You got it. So that's why this is also in the future. And it's also saying he will come. And this is actually referring back to this, how should I say, the second coming of Christ. Because he's going to come to Jerusalem, and there's going to be singing and everlasting joy, and they shall obtain joy and gladness and all this, because what is the second coming of Christ supposed to be? Granted, it's supposed to be the judgment and such, but it's also supposed to be for those who believe, basically, the return of Garden of Eden. Not really the truly Garden of Eden, but where God is dwelling with them. Verse 12, I, even I, am he who comforts you. Who are you that you should be afraid of a man who will die, and of the Son of Man who will be made like grass? And you forget the Lord your Maker, who stretched out the heavens and laid the foundations of the earth. You have feared continually every day because of the fury of the oppressor. When he has prepared to destroy him, where is the fury of the oppressor? What's he saying here? Well, the first phrase, I, even I am. In other words, he's reinforcing, I am God, okay, who comforts you. I am the supreme, I am comforting you. And he goes on to tell you in cheek, why are you afraid of a man who's going to die? Men are like grass grows and dies. I'm not like that. He goes on then to say, and you forgot who I was. Me, who stretched out the heavens and made the foundations of earth. You fear because of the fury of the oppressor, but you forget who you should fear. Because he goes in the last phrase, where is the fury of the oppressor? Because I will overcome him. Verse 14, the captive exile hastens that he may be loosened, that he should not die in the pit, and that his bread should not fail. And verse 15, he says, but I am the Lord your God, who divided the seas when waves roared. The Lord of hosts is his name. He's saying you're worrying about everything, but you keep forgetting who I am. I am God. Remember, I parted the seas. And I'm the Lord of all. You know, he keeps emphasizing it. This whole chapter, he keeps emphasizing who he is. In verse 16, and I have put my words in your mouth. I have covered you with the shadow of my hand. Then I may plant in heavens, lay the foundations of the earth, and say to Zion, you are my people. He's going, I protected you. I've been doing things that you can lead others to the same. And through you I have laid the foundations. And yet I am saying, you are my people. Not, you will be my people. You may be my people. No, you are. So in other words, by being right with the Lord and all this such, you are his. Not if, maybe, possibly. No, you are. Just got to remember who God is. Anybody got anything else they wish to say before we continue on? Verse 17. Awake, awake, stand up, O Jerusalem. You have drunk at the hand of the Lord the cup of his fury. You have drunk the dregs of the cup of trembling and drained it out. What's kind of unique here? What's he saying here?
Well, I mean, if he's talking to those that were in Babylon, I mean, I don't know.
They learned his fury. I mean, you who have drunk at the hand of the Lord's cup with his.
Well, you gotta remember, they're not in Babylon
Oh,
yet.
right, that's why, yeah, and that's why I was thinking, like, this is the future, but this is
But,
before.
you know, okay, they're being oppressed.
Yeah.
Because we've been oppressed by the Syrians, and then eventually the Babylons are going to come, we're going to be oppressed. You know, and they're going to themselves, how much worse can it get? You know, it seems to go from one fire into a bigger fire and all of this. And can we take any more? We're right down to the dregs. You know, right, let's put it this way, the dregs of coffee or even the dregs of wine are bitter. You know, so you've taken right down to the bitterness. You know, and you've actually drained it. So in other words, he's saying you have received the fullness of this. You know, and that's what he's saying here. But he's getting their attention because he says, you know, stand up, O Jerusalem. In other words, stand up, you righteous ones. You have gone through the worst, is what he's basically saying.
But yet this is pre-Babylon. Is it really the worst yet?
Well, it's a prophecy basically,
Okay.
but it's also a comfort prophecy in the fact that, yeah, it's going to get a lot worse, but remember what's on the backside. In other words, don't live in the moment, look into the future, be right with God that you're going to be blessed. Let's put it this way, another way, you're going to undergo major surgery and such, and they'll tell you flat out that it's going to be terrible. And, well, I'm going to use an example. A couple of you have gone through cancer and are going through cancer. You know, they warn you beforehand what's going to be coming most times. In other words, you know, all this. But then they say after you're through this and everything goes right, I'm going to put the if everything goes right because there's man involved, it's going to be better. It's going to be better than one before you were sick. So, okay, you've been forewarned, you've been prepared, okay, you know how to shift your burden. That's what he's doing here. This is what he's doing here. Verse 18, there is no one to guide her among all the sons she has brought forth, nor is there anyone who takes her by the hand among all the sons she has brought up. These two things have come to you. Who will be sorry for you? Desolation, destruction, famine, and sword. By whom will I comfort you? And basically, see, saying here, you have depended upon man. Because if you notice, it's all small sons. You know, who among you, in other words, who among man can help you? Who among man has done anything? And when it's all said and done, who's going to be sorry for you? You know? Verse 20, your sons have fainted, they lie at the head of all the streets like an antelope in a net. They're full of the fury of the Lord, the rebuke of your God. In other words, people are blaming God for what happens, is basically saying. You know, they're full of it, you know, they're mad at the Lord, and they rebuke God. You know. Read verse 21, therefore please hear this, you afflicted, and drunk, but not with wine. Okay? And drunk not with wine. What do they usually describe a drunk as? Happy and carefree. And that's basically what he's saying here. And he's saying, though, You know, you're not drunk with wine, but you're happy and carefree with life, basically. You know, he's making mockery of the world. It says, thus says your Lord, the Lord and your God, who pleads the cause of his people. In other words, once again, he says, I'm the one, or i.e., Christ is the one who pleads for you and takes you out of this. And you are my people. And he says, see, I have taken out of your hand this cup that we have just described, the dregs of the cup of my fury. You shall no longer drink it. In other words, if you're in me and I am in you, you do not have to worry. The dregs are taken care of. I took care of them. They're gone. In other words, it's a great comfort and such. But I like this in verse 23. But I will put it into the hands of those who afflict you, who have said to you, lie down that we may walk over you. And you have laid your body like a ground, and as a street for those who walk over you. So what's he kind of saying here?
Give the judgments he had against them to their enemies.
Well, yeah. Basically, what they were going to do to you is what's going to happen to them. Why? Because they're not right with God. Because if you notice that righteousness was used throughout this whole chapter. And also, each time you hear it, you know, now listen to me and watch me and all this stuff, and wait. It's basically trying to make sure you're staying centered on God. Another thing that this chapter is fighting against is complacency. Remember, I've told you numerous times, and I'll say it again, God hates complacency. And God is going to take and shake you in order to get you off your complacency. He wants you to come to him. He wants you to know him. He wants you to seek him. Because what happens when you're complacent? Oh, well, it's good enough.
You lose yourself.
Yeah. And we even had the apostles talking about that. You know, especially like Paul. Get off of the bread and milk. Come on, let's get on to the big stuff. Let's get on to the meat. Let's start discussing. It's all well and good for those who first come to Christ to be on milk. Because they have to understand. And it's a basis, but you got to understand on a basis and grow with it. It's just like a child. You start them on milk, then you move them on to soft foods, then you start moving them on to hard foods. Then before you know it, they're eating T-bone steaks and everything else, and just gnawing on things. But they progressed up. They become stronger. Because if they stayed on milk, nothing would happen. And they would never virtually grow. Something to think about. It's an analogy, but it's also the way you have to be within your Christian life, within the life within Christ. You have to, God continues telling you to seek him, and you will find him. And each time you seek, you find something new, and each time you find something new, there's more questions that you got to do more seeking on. And the only time that you're going to understand totally what everything that God did is, I'm sorry to say, is when you're finally in his presence. So it'll never happen on this earth. So you have a quest that you have to do the whole time that you are here. Seek the Lord.